All right, so I went over the new piece and marked out where all of the spot welds will be. These match the factory locations. So we see 4 over there, and then we got 1 down here, 1 here, 1 over here. And then we have 4 in here, and we had, in my case, I had 3 because there was probably more, but because I cut my piece smaller originally, that's all I had. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill all these out. I also have to drill the hole here for my leaf spring bucket, and I'm gonna go ahead and mount that and get that hole drilled as well. This way this piece is pretty much ready to go. I got to remove this seatbelt piece as well because I need to move it in, and I don't think that's in the right location, to be honest with you. I'll have to double check that, but it seems a lot closer to the edge than the original piece did. So anyway, we'll have to double check that. Then I'll have to make whatever cuts around here. All right, so we got all the holes drilled. I just used a 5/16 inch drill bit for all these. So we got them down this flange. We got them in the somewhat original location to where the other ones were. And then, of course, we got them on the flange side where the rocker mounts as well. So I drilled these out and then went over them all with the 2-inch sanding disc just to clean up any kind of burrs or anything like that. Usually when you drill something, you get burrs on the other side. Right here, so I'm looking up here, this is where the seatbelt reinforcement area was. This is the part I got to trim out to make way for the seatbelt hump that I cut out. So interestingly enough here, you can see that there's a good bit of rust between that piece. So glad I cut it out. I mean, granted, these cars probably won't see much rain after we restore them, but nonetheless, why add more rust to it? So we're going to go ahead and use the original rectangular piece. It'll give me a little more room. So I'm going to go ahead and make a cardboard template of this area here and then transfer that over to the new torque box and cut that out. All right, guys, quick look at the template. So it's close. I just put these spot weld holes on here because I transferred those over to the other one, so it gets me somewhat close on the new piece. So I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the new piece and then scribe this line out right here, and then we'll make that cut. All right, guys, so we got this piece cut. You can see that took a lot off right there. And I just have this piece bent over right now. Over here, I cut out for the subframe connectors. So the old piece of the torque box is still in there. So when we weld everything up, it'll all be connected nice. So the idea is to fit this now, get it where we want it. And then once we do, we'll get that welded, and then we'll clean this whole thing up and get it covered in epoxy primer. I got the new torque box pretty close. I had to persuade it a lot. It just didn't fit that well, especially back here in this area. And then up here, I know I'm gonna have to persuade it too after I replace this metal up here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just set it in here, clamp it in place, and show you sort of what it looks like and where the trouble areas are. And then we'll take it out and we're gonna then prep all this area here. All right, so here's a look at it just clamped in right now. So this area over here, if I press on this, this will go nice and tight here. So we're good now over here. This is really close back here. This is where I had most of my trouble. I just couldn't get this thing to sit flat in there. So what I did to fix that is basically hit it pretty good with a block of wood and some hammer, and finally got it to go down in there. The other area I had to tweak was right here. So I had to bend this one out. It was in too far, so it was hitting up against this side here. And then over here, I had to hit this out a little bit so that it would give me some more room to go up and over this. This flange is sticking up a little bit, but I think once we get it in place, we can go ahead and use some sheet metal screws or something to kind of pull that nice and tight there. So up here, you can see that these two are good here. This one is, there's a little bit of a gap here for this one, and the same for this one. There's a little bit of a gap there. I'm not too worried about it. I think once we get this side in or down here and we get that sheet metal screwed into place and everything, this one will get a little closer. And then if we have to, we can tap the floor down a little bit or drive some sheet metal screws through and see what happens there as well. So
Obviously this isn't going to fit as good as the original did, so we're going to have to make some compromises here, but I think we can get it pretty close. Now over here, this is going to be a little bit of a problem area, so you can see these ones here fit nice, and then as we get back here we get some more gaps, and then up here we get a lot of gaps. So I'm thinking that once I get this end in and secured, then I can come over here and work on this end here. The problem right now is that, you know, as a hammer on this end comes up, and as a hammer on this end comes up. So we're gonna have to get one side secure before we finish the other side. And then of course I can always tap the floor pan down a little bit so that it fits nice for a nice plug weld there. So the other thing on this torque box, I don't know if there's a difference maybe between the 74s and ups, but you can see this seatbelt hole doesn't even line up with the original seatbelt hole. So we're gonna take care of all that. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and remove this, and I'm gonna go ahead and prep the area behind it, strip it down to bare metal so that we can see where all the problem areas are. And then we're gonna go ahead and address those problem areas, and then we'll get back to putting this piece in. All right guys, so we got everything cleaned up. What I did for all the large parts is just use one of these blue strip discs here. They work great for this kind of stuff. And then I came through with a Harbor Freight spot blaster, and I basically got the hard to reach areas, the areas that I couldn't get with the blue strip disc. This thing works very well. The media I used is Black Diamond from Tractor Supply. It's the fine stuff. So, you know, as you use this stuff up, you can sweep it up and then just run it through a screen and reuse it. If you have a spotless garage and you got your floors all cleaned up and everything, you'll want to put some tarps up and all that stuff, or some kind of plastic so that this doesn't go everywhere, because it goes everywhere. All right guys, so I cut the other flange off and I put this one on. You can see here the amount of space you'll gain if you get rid of your seatbelt hump inside the car. So here's one that's not modified yet, and then here's the one I modified. So you figure coming back, taking out a good chunk there. So anyway, this is good to go. This thing does not fit that well at all. I had to cut out this section here. You can see here, the flange was just holding me up. So what I'm gonna do is fit this in the car, kind of like so, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and tack weld a flange on here and then bend it over to where I need it, and then I'll make the cut and weld it together. So that'll give me more room here. But overall, it's fitting pretty good. I think once we get this piece on and then we get the seatbelt mounting block back in, we'll be good to go. So again, we're gonna take that block and move it over this way. This way I don't have any concerns in my car about you know, seatbelts working or not. So, and then this, it's just a little tight right now, but it pushes in. So overall, I think we're almost there. This definitely took a while. This piece, like I said, didn't fit that great, and I had to persuade it a lot. So we're just about there. We'll get this piece on and then get the seatbelt piece in, and we'll be good to go. All right, guys, so we got this piece cleaned up as best as we can. We got the underside stripped down as well. We got some weld-through primer right here because we have to take the original seatbelt mounting block and spot weld it in this area here. I'm moving this in from the factory location, probably a ½ inch to an inch here. I don't know what the exact measurement was. I got this side in weld-through primer as well. So we are ready to go ahead and plug weld these together, and then we'll be ready to come back and epoxy prime this piece and the car. So let's go ahead and weld that in. All right, guys, got it welded in, ground those down flush, and we are good to go. So before I start epoxy primering anything, I'm gonna go ahead and line this up in the car and drill the hole through the patch panel that we made. This way we get some epoxy primer around the edge of that hole and everything. So this is just like a spring-loaded punch, and it makes it easy. So right here's the mark. I actually made one a little more in, there's two there, but we're gonna use this one. Basically take this spring-loaded punch and you press down, and it'll leave a mark there for you. So works good for stuff like that.
All right, guys, so we got the hole drilled, and I've hit this whole area with some 80 grit and even out around here because this epoxy's been on here for a while now. So that'll give the new epoxy something to stick to. So we're gonna go ahead and wipe this down with wax and grease remover on both sides of the car. And then we're gonna go ahead and hit this with epoxy primer. And we're also gonna hit this with some wax and grease remover as well. We'll get all these cleaned up and ready for epoxy primer. All right, guys, we got everything wiped down. Got this piece hanging here for epoxy primer. Got this wiped down as well. And then of course, inside the car, where we put this patch in is wiped down as well. So we're gonna go ahead and let this dry for half an hour or so, make sure it's nice and dry, and then we'll come back and hit it with some epoxy primer. We'll hit this piece as well. All right, guys, we got 2 coats of Eastwood epoxy primer on these pieces. So got that's all coated up nice. We got this piece here, and we got the inside of the car as well. So we're gonna let this stuff cure for a few days because we're still gonna have to kind of force fit some of this. It doesn't fit perfect. So the longer we let the epoxy dry, the stronger it'll become. So we'll go ahead again and let that dry for a few days, and then we'll plug weld it into place. After that, we're gonna cut out a section of this frame rail, just this bottom part here, and replace it because you can see I found a small hole right there. So we'll just go ahead, put a nice little patch in there, and we'll call this stuff good. All right, guys, so if you're enjoying this video and you want to see the other stuff I just mentioned, go ahead and subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you get alerts whenever we post new videos, comment, like, share, all that stuff. We'll see you in the next one.